Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationship
From
from surviving
surviving
to
to
thriving.
thriving.
Today on TMC, we have an exciting and amazing episode where we're discussing and talking about the reflection of Father's Day and other significant people in your life and how to quit taking the hurt and the pain that we experience personally.
While you're tuning in today, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and share. When this podcast airs, it will be after Sunday, Father's Day. But we thought that it still was important to talk about the importance of a father's love and the impact it has on relationships. And we have Jamila joining us today, and we will be discussing a father's love and its impact on relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that is so true because whether your father was present or not present, there's still an influence and an impact. And I think sometimes we can gloss over it sometimes, especially if your father wasn't present. It's like, oh, he wasn't there, blah, blah, blah. There's an awareness of it, but what does it really mean and how does it really play out in relationships when you're either missing that? And one of the things I would even say is that a lot of times for the ones who had fathers there, just because a father is present in the home doesn't mean that he had a healthy presence in the home. And I think
Exactly. And when we started talking about this initially, I thought about that because I remember having this conversation with someone years ago because they made the statement like, he grew up with his dad and his mom in his home. He should know better or he should be different. And of course, again, this starting from the top, this is not bashing men. It's just talking about the importance of a father in a relationship. And I said that to her then. I said, just because someone's father is in the home doesn't mean that they displayed or showed that person how to be a good father. And as we were
Absolutely.
talking, even in preparation for the podcast, we kind of discussed, that a father's love, a father's presence, a father's influence in someone's life, whether you're male or female, it makes a big difference for people that a male that has his father in his life. His father is teaching him how to treat women. His father is teaching him how relationships go. His father is teaching him what a man does in the family and in the household. His father is teaching him how a man leads or does not lead. Whatever his father displays before him is teaching him something, thus producing a certain part of the man he will be. Also, although we know, along the way they can meet other people or have other people influence them that will also change some things, but it's like a foundation, and then for the woman, for the female, thinking about the aspect of how your father loves you and how he treats you is showing you what to expect from a man. It's showing you how a man should treat you. It's showing you what your relationship should be like with a man, how your father relates to your mother, or how, even if he's not married to your mother, how he relates to whoever he's married to or whoever he's in relationship with. It kind of displays what you should expect from men, and it kind of builds that foundation. So a father's love and his influence is very important.
a lot of times what we hear is that for guys, for boys growing up, oh, the father is really important. But you just said it. On the flip side, it is so important for females because the reality is that the first man that should say, I love you and demonstrate love to you and affirm you should be your father. And that was my experience. I was blessed that my father was in my life when I was growing up, but he passed away when I was 15, which was such a critical point for me because I was at that point to where I'm going into teenagehood, I'm growing and I'm changing. And he wasn't there through those years to where I needed him, his voice and his presence in my life to say, Jamila, you're beautiful. Jamila, I love you. I started going into relationships, seeking that validation that I was used to getting from my dad. And I can tell anybody, it doesn't work out because it's not the same. And then it's like, that's a slippery slope downwards when you're going into a relationship thinking something that is like, no, 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 that's not the appropriate place. You know that old song, looking for love in all the wrong places.
Mhm.
That became what I was doing because, it wasn't until I became adult that I realized that's what I was doing. I was seeking my father's love in all these dating relationships and it wasn't satisfying because none of them at that time measured up to my father's love. So for a female, for a girl child, it's so important the presence of a father or a father figure in the girl's life.
Yeah. And that can definitely be a danger even going into the relationships because you're trying to still get that approval, that father's
Yeah.
love.
Mhm.
It can definitely affect your relationship and who you're in relationship with. Maybe you were raised by, single mother, and your father was supposed to pick you up on weekends and he didn't show up, and he left you there with your backpack sitting on the porch waiting and crying and broken on the inside because they didn't show up. I mean, all those things plays a huge part of relationship because now that female is looking at every man and having distrust and men all together because that first number one father, that man that was supposed to be there, that man that was supposed to love them when nobody else did, is the one that rejected them. So now you have someone that's 28 years old, still broken from when they were 8 years old, and going from relationship to relationship based on their history.
And I was about to speak to that when Jamila said that, because I was the exact opposite. You said your father was in your life until he passed away when you were 15, and for me it was the exact opposite. My father wasn't in my life as a child, and the time I spent around my father was very few when I was younger, and I did experience that. I did experience the longing for my father, and it did create, and I guess that's why I said you can speak to that, because we had to work through that once we were married,
Yeah.
because it did create a distrust for me. Because if you were told something when you were a child and it didn't happen, for me it didn't create that atmosphere of jumping from relationship to relationship, because I've only, he's my only adult relationship. We got married very young, but it did cause other issues because it created this distrust. It created this thing that no matter what he did when we first got married or didn't do
Yeah.
in the beginning, it created this atmosphere of me waiting for him to disappoint me.
Yeah.
It created this atmosphere of me waiting for him to let me down, waiting for him to say something and not produce what he said.
Yeah.
And at the time, I couldn't even articulate or verbalize that that's what it was, that I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, that was caused. Now I can tell you that that's what it was, but then I couldn't tell you that. So what the reason, that's one of the reasons why I'm adamant that a father's presence and his influence is very important to a child, male or female, because I know that I didn't go from relationship to relationship, but there was still something broken. There was still something that was there that was causing issues, because it affected, like, I would say, self-esteem, because I used to think anytime something went wrong, oh, this is going to cause us to not be
Even when
together.
things didn't go
Yeah,
wrong,
even when something didn't
yeah,
go wrong, I would be expecting something to go
yeah,
wrong. So all of that, and again, is not to bash men, because I think you said this when we were, just tossing around the idea, Jamila, you talked about how, some people have mommy issues. So you have mothers that do the same thing. So I guess maybe we should have called the podcast "A Parent's Love is Affects Relationships," because the way we start off, it does do something to your foundation. And I think about a home. If a foundation has something wrong with it before the home is built on it, it makes issues. It makes for a problem. It makes for shakiness. Sometimes you have to rip it all up in order for it to be repaired, so that you can start to build on something better. And not having your father in your life, or not having a good example of a father, even if it's not your biological father, it can be some type of father's role model, an uncle or a cousin or somebody that plays that role. It basically feels that someone letting this child know that they're important, letting this child know that they are loved, letting this child know that someone has their back, and showing them an example of what a leader is. I think that's very good.
but I want to speak to that because I
Okay.
think that's so important because in the beginning of our relationship, you had this issue.
I
You
did.
had this issue within yourself, but I have to give you your flowers right now for what you did. We're always talking about communication, and not just communication, but proper communication. Proper communication, and what you did right in that situation. I don't remember the whole conversation, but it was something in the realm of, even me, it's like, why do you feel this way? Have I gave you a reason to feel this
Mm-hmm.
way? So immediately after we had that conversation, you begin to look within yourself and like, why am I
Mm-hmm.
like that?
Mm-hmm. I
And you
did.
did that, and once you did that, we had the conversation. And so now the things turn from me taking it personal, that,
Mm-hmm.
man, you don't trust me. For me taking that personal and going that way with it, you told me that. So now when you feel like that, and when that distrust kicked in, I knew it wasn't about me. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
personalize it. Instead of fighting against you, fight with you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I do want to say that because I think that was key. And I believe I want to say within 2 years of our marriage,
Yeah, we talked
she
about it
yeah,
early
yeah,
on,
early
very
on
early
she
on.
talked to me about
Mm-hmm.
that, and it really set us up for success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sean always says something to me. She says that, and I think this is important for the singles. So it's not to say, okay, you have a daddy issue or you have mommy issues, that so that disqualifies you from being in a relationship.
No.
No, not whatsoever. But
Mm-hmm.
what it says is that you have to find someone, or someone finds you, who is willing to either help you carry your baggage or help you unpack that
That's
package and
it.
drop it out
Mm.
somewhere. And I think
Yep.
that is so profound, because it's not to say we go into relationships being perfect, not whatsoever, And when I look at the Bible, perfect is mature. I'm forever in the process of maturing. But
Mm-hmm.
Same.
somebody, like you said, that he could fight, and when you said that it made me think about that he was willing to fight with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because at the time, like I said, I wouldn't be able to articulate it the same way I did now, but I did tell him how I felt growing up. And when we started to, something we started to do is talk more about our childhood, and we do it. And it's like over
We
the
still
years, it's
do it.
just
Yeah.
continue. We just go
We
deeper
still
and
do it.
deeper.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we realized what it helped us do.
It's
Because
unpacking things. Yeah.
exactly, me being honest and saying, as a child, there was times when I was waiting for my dad to come get me and he never showed up, and that was very disappointing to me. And then it's like, why do you feel this way? If I then it's like, wait a minute, maybe that's connected to that, because it's it's me connecting the dots. But like Cedric said, being able to communicate it, to verbalize it, and to share it with my husband, it was for us to unpack it together, because even we got married very young. So even for us, it was like, oh, but you might think of a mindset like, okay, so how do we work through this so that this is not a problem for us? And as you continue to grow and continue to unpack any issues that's there and share them,
Yeah.
then the person is able to do that, to unpack it with you and help you to drop it off, or either help you carry it so that they know how to say, babe, I want to explain to you, this is this, whatever it is. If I needed that affirmation, he would do that. He would say, okay, I'm about to tell you this, or whatever, we're about to talk about this. This is not this, this is me telling you this, whatever it is. And that's what you have to do. So all of that proper communication and talking about how you feel, and actually just communicating with each other, it helps unpack that
Yeah.
so that I could express to him the lack of male influence, or the lack of male influence in certain parts of my life, what it did for me as an adult.
And I think if you take it from a dating or a courtship process, it's something to be aware of. It's like, is this a bag I can help carry? Am I willing to help carry
Yeah.
this baggage, or is it
Yeah.
something like I can't? I won't be able to help you carry and or unpack it. So that's, those are the real life questions when you really start to get into a relationship and you starting to see, the representatives go sit down and you starting to see the real
Real
person.
person
Yeah.
stand up,
Yeah.
right?
And
Right.
and I'm glad you said that because I do want to go back to that because here's the thing. Going back to what I said, this is the thing. Like what you were just sharing about, are you willing to carry the badges for the individual and everybody? If you love someone, the answer is always yes.
Mhm.
But I believe maybe I'm wrong, but I really believe in my heart because I know what worked for us. I believe that whole conversation, it allowed me not to get offended And it allowed, instead of getting offended, now it's like, oh wow, she's broken in this area. Okay, I need to help her through, because that's what love do. That's what relationships do. We build each other up, but it's hard to build somebody up
When you
when you
don't
don't know they
know.
need to be
Yeah,
built,
that's true.
because
That's
we
true.
always thinking that in the relationship we got to hold back, we got to hide something. But especially when you're talking about marrying somebody, you have to let it all out, because if you say you're marrying them, you mean I trust you with my innermost self. And we're talking about two becoming one. You can't become one if you don't know each other. So
Hmm.
it's like having that mutual respect. And I'm gonna tell you, it hurts. It hurt me. She said some things to me in my life, and boy, I'm telling you, it hurt. I said some things to her in her life. It hurts. But one thing we do, we always get each other ready for it.
Yeah.
Like, you know what?
Yeah.
I want to share some with you.
Prepping.
We,
Hmm.
we prep it. I'm talking. We make the table. We put the icing on the cake. We put the cat. We say this. These are the words we use, and we both do it to each other. Like, babe, I need to talk to you about something. I'm not sure how you're going to take this, but I want you to know that I love you and share this with you because I care about you. What does do for us? It takes the walls down. I mean, it's
Hmm.
like Jericho wall just
Mm,
come crumbling down, and now we're able to deal with each other and help each other, and it kills the offense. It's like, okay, we're gonna have a crucial conversation. Let me, you know what? I'm not even talking to you right now. I want to call the devil. I want to let the devil know, hey, devil, you have no power over this relationship. You
Hmm.
have no power over this conversation I'm about to have. I'm about to have a conversation with my wife. So I'm going to talk to the devil first, and then I'm going to talk to my wife. And it allows the spouse to put the guards down. And now we can have a real relationship.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it also gives the other person the strength, the understanding for how they can. It's like, okay, this is not about me.
Yeah.
This is something that was way before me, or
Yeah.
this is something that was, because of their parental relationship, their relationship with their father, the influence of their father or the lack thereof. And this is something that I now have to work on or be intentional about helping them carry. Is now something that I have to be intentional about helping them unpack, because I would say that with Cedric it helped to unpack it for me, because I come to the knowledge that whatever happened to me in my childhood doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue to repeat itself in my life, but it took him and I working together to unpack that for us to get there. And I did have, other men in my life, my uncles, my grandfathers, but it's still that played a different role as far as that scar or that wound being there, even to the fact that I did not necessarily know it was there in the beginning.
Yeah. And one of the things I think that is so important that we express, and Cedric said it, and I recently heard it again. I was in a emotional workshop for work about how managing your emotions in the workplace, and it talked about relationships too. But I had to learn Q-tip. I knew that, but I forgotten it. I guess I had threw that Q-tip out the window. And I had to go find some more, is quit taking it personal. And that's
Wow.
something I struggle
Wow.
with sometimes, because it can feel really personal, because the root of it is not about you, but the fruit feels like it's about you, and
Yeah.
you may be hurt by what someone's doing, but they're not doing it because of you. You just hurt by it because that's the action, but the root of it is, it has nothing to do with you. And so you really do, when you're dealing with someone and you love someone enough that you say, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you carry this baggage. I'm going to help you unpack. But to really unpack it, you have to say, I have to Q-tip it. I have to
Mhm.
quit taking it personal. When you do things, it's not always about me. Because, and I think we do that sometimes in all our relationships. Like, you can walk into the office and your mind could be on the horrible accident that you saw on your way to work, but you go in and your mind is just somewhere else. You're not even speaking, but somebody take it personally. Oh, they didn't speak to me. They're
Yeah.
taking it personally, when it's like, it ain't even about you. I didn't even see you sitting over there. My mind was over in Kalamazoo,
Or their
and
family member died. I mean, the
that's
kids
it.
got in trouble at school. Somebody's sick. It can be anything, and we take it personal.
And I could be the first one to say it is a challenge not to take it personal.
Absolutely.
It is. It is.
Absolutely.
It is. It is. But I think that this is one thing that we're doing here today. And
Awareness.
exactly,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was going to say. That's the thing that helps. And that's what we're doing here today, bringing awareness to the fact that, and this is why one of the reasons, because there's many, but one of the reasons why I felt it was important And when we start talking about a father's love and their impact or how it impacts relationships,
Yeah.
this is one of the things that makes that important because although we know that whatever that person is displaying may not have anything to do with you, then we take it personal, and us taking it personal is because of sometimes what we've experienced or what happened to us. And I think people are doing it more now, but when we were growing up, it wasn't a lot of the things that we're talking about was not discussed. It wasn't talked about. Nobody was talking about these things as you grew up, so you didn't hear, that people, when you grow up, these experiences shape people, and it's going to affect them, and they're going to have baggage, and this is an influence on them. And sometimes some fathers, they may not even have been aware of how their actions were influencing their child, or how their actions was influencing their nieces or their nephews or whatever,
Yeah.
whomever they may be. So the knowledge of the fact that what you do impacts other people, but at the same time also knowing that sometimes past experiences that are being displayed now in behavior doesn't have anything to do with you. Having the knowledge of that will change the trajectory of how we do things now. And of course, it's still going to, like you said, Jamila, it's still going to be a challenge. We still have to remind ourselves. You're going to find yourself in that moment when you take
Absolutely.
it personal, and then you have
Absolutely.
to talk to yourself and say, wait a minute, I got a Q-tip it. What we're talking about today is a father's love and the influence that it has on relationships. At the same time, your father had a father, and their father had a father, and they experienced things as well. Some of them may have experienced someone not leading properly. Some of them may have experienced abuse, neglect, or some of them may not have had, guidance, or even things that happened to them that you as their child may not be aware of.
Yeah.
So you basically live it out because you feel the effects of it, but because you don't know their whole story. And sometimes I hate to say it, but it's true. Sometimes the older generation is not so open to talk about what happened to them that affected them, and how they lived out their younger days, or some of the decisions they made, or
Yeah.
what influenced them. Every father has a father. And if your father wasn't there, or if there wasn't a male figure in your life to teach you how to be a father, or how to lead, the same thing that we're saying for a father to display to his children today, whether you're male or female, if there wasn't someone in your life to display that to you, then therefore it kind of creates a domino effect. And then, again, once we mature as the children of someone who didn't have that influence, as the child of someone who didn't have that influence or didn't have that proper guidance, then we have to grow to a level and mature to learn to stop. I mean, to Q-tip it, to quit
Yeah.
taking it
And
personal.
a lot of times we are hurt and we are offended by a 20-year-old.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
think about it.
that's good.
Most of the time when we were hurt, I mean, our parents were in their 20s.
Mhm.
They were young. They were still trying to figure it out. And here we are, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, and still offended by something the 20-year-old done to you. And
Mhm.
if you really look, I mean, I'm telling you, if you're 40 years old and I'm looking at a 20-year-old, they have certain maturities and
Mhm.
they're growing in certain areas, and we offended, and we are molded based off something that happened. They didn't know.
Mhm.
They didn't know. We take it personal, and we were so hard on our fathers and our mothers. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of them didn't know. The truth of the matter is, just like a lot of things you don't know. Think about
Right.
when we were in our 20s. I mean, that's why they say we make better grandparents than we make parents. Why?
Mhm.
Because all the mistakes we make as parents, we learn it, and we finally get it right when it's time to be a grandparent.
Wow. Yeah, that's good.
I mean, and a lot of times they're broken. And like you said, it's so beautiful that the narrative in society and the narrative in the African American community is shifting to where we can
Yes.
talk about these things.
Yes.
It's not taboo to go get counseling.
Yeah.
You go
Mhm.
get counseling, you're not considered crazy.
Yeah.
And so we can address this. But a lot of times there was a lot of brokenness. And what was the, number one thing most Black children can repeat? What goes on in this
In this
house
house
stays in this
stays in this
house.
house.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
that creates a culture of not talking about it and not being expressed. So it's like, but now we're moving to where we should do better because we have more resources. Climate is shifting, environments are shifting. So we should be better because we're learning and we have more tools available from
Yeah.
us. that our parents in that generation didn't. So it's like, and I think one of the things I've had to learn to grow was to give grace, because I used to be really hardcore and I wouldn't give a lot of grace. But when I really started to see my parents as people
Yeah.
and know that they have a story and how that story is playing out, I started to make some connections and like, oh, that's why this shows up like this in our relationship. And it helped me to see it better. Now, did it instantly take away the hurt? No, I had to make a choice not to let that hurt govern. I heard something this week. It says, don't let an invalid emotion run a relationship.
Yeah.
Mm.
But listen, think about this. You just said something, Jamila, and you said something. I'm like, wow. Our parents, they were raised in generation. What happens in this house stays in this house.
Mhm.
We're just one generation away from parents. Right now, we're living in the information generation. I mean, you can go on YouTube and listen to podcasts like this. I mean,
Yes.
information is
Mhm.
everywhere. But just one generation ago, that information was
Wasn't
not there.
available.
And
Yeah.
now we holding them accountable because we got all the information. We more self-aware, and we want to hold grudges against people that didn't have the information we had. Give your father, I know Father's Day is over, but call your dad. Call your dad and have a conversation with him. You have information he didn't have. And
Mhm.
you take that information you have, the information you listen to right now, and use it. Apply it. Apply it to the situation. You'll be the one. I know he's your dad. I know he's older than you. He's supposed to know better, but you have information he don't have. So want you be the one. All the information you have, call your father, call your mother, and say, Mother, you know what? I'm sorry for my and allow them to do the same.
Yeah, because you know what the powerful part of that is, that now we can be a generations of curse breakers and not curse.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
absolutely. Generation of curse breakers have a lot of work.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that part up because we started talking about the effects and what it, some of the things that we carry because of these things. But when we get to a level where we are self-aware and we want to be better, then we also have to understand that, my grandmother used to always say three sides to every story. My side, their side, and the truth lies somewhere
Absolutely.
in between. And so,
Absolutely.
even when we're talking about our parents and our parental relationship, the father's love, the mother's love, the parents' love, and its effect on our relationships today, we also have to understand that there is a part of their story that we may or may not know.
Never
And
know.
then and then for us, because we are in the living, we get the awesome
It's
privilege
a
to
blessing.
live in the
It's a
age that
blessing.
we live in today.
Right.
And we have things such as this podcast, other podcasts, books, we have coaches, we have counselors. And like you said, Jamila, these things are like readily available to us and we are apt to do them. So now when we're working through these things, and this is what I heard you say, Cedric, instead of focusing or addressing the things from a blame,
Yeah.
which is what we're doing today. Because our goal for talking about the father's love and its effect on the relationship is to encourage a father to be there for their child,
Yeah.
not to beat you up for what you have not done
Yeah.
or what you didn't know to do, but to encourage you that when you hear this, you have the option to do better. That when you hear this, even if you're a new father, you know that, okay, I'm going to do this for my child because it's going to affect them in some way. And yes, when they get older, whatever, I was listening to, we were doing a Bible study for a Church for Life group before, and Jenny Allen said in the book that her and her husband have already begun to save to put up for their children's therapy because they know their children gonna need therapy. So if we've already fallen short in some area, then maybe we need to do that. Put up for our kids coaching because they're gonna need some coaching. Because I was 20 when I had them, and I learned better now, but they still might need some counseling from when I was 20.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
so what it really
And that's
takes is
good. Yeah.
what it really takes is all parts, the parent and the child. Once the child gets to a mature age, and you said we're always maturing, Jamila, and that is true. Once we're maturing, then for us, when we recognize something that, I have this because of what happened when I was a kid. I have this because of what didn't happen when I was a kid. But the next step is, how do we move forward? How do I reconcile that relationship with my parent? And then how do I do better with the next generation?
Wow. You know what? And this is the thing. in our lives. We all have some type of broken in our
In
life.
some way, yeah.
This is the thing. I think we don't do this often enough. Oftentimes we're broken in our lives and we get help, we get coaching, and we get those broken, we get those wounds healed, but we don't ever go back to all
Mm-hmm.
the people in our lives while we were broken, we broke them.
Mm. Oh
It's like
wow.
it's like sometimes we need to go back and look at, like those. Sometime in the morning, you'll see those snails, and you can tell where a snail has been because it leaves the slime
Trail.
behind.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a trail of slime behind it,
Oh
and you
wow.
can always find that snail by the slime.
Yeah.
It's like after we get that situation fixed, we should go back and look at the slime and deal with those situations prior to that.
It is that's good not to be so quick to throw people away and not to leave what you just said, not to leave a path. I look back behind me and there's nothing but broken relationships and broken hearts behind me. That doesn't bring God glory. So it's like something has to shift in the way that I'm relating. And this topic right here really helps to take relationships from surviving to really
Thriving.
thriving
Yeah.
when you can deal with the root issues, and that's one of the things when you really start watching those home improvement shows and
Right.
that when they strip off the walls, they're gonna be like, oh, this is just a quick renovation. Then they strip off the walls and then this is out of code and this is up to date and then you
Yeah, we
get more
need to replace
money.
these joints and these joints.
Right.
Yeah, all of that. And then, when you were talking about that, and even when Cedric was talking, I thought about that because even though, and I want to say that and share that, even though, like I shared that, my father wasn't there when I was a child, and we didn't have a relationship growing up. I didn't have my dad in my life. When I got older, for Cedric and I's relationship, we were able to early on in our marriage be able to say, okay, this is not about him, and that's in reference to him.
Yeah.
But for myself and my dad, in order for us to be able to move forward, to create different, I learned different as well. And it was that I don't know all of whatever happened to him, and I don't know what caused or whatever, whatever the story is to what I received.
Yeah.
But understanding that healing that I received, you want that healing to project on that relationship. And then for the children that I have influence on, because when I think about this, I think about when they said it takes a village to raise kids, they mean that.
Yeah.
And when we say father's influence, they don't have to be your biological father, they don't have to be your biological mother, but they are a person that you look to for that figure.
Yeah.
So for me, what it did for me, even what I experienced as a kid, one thing it did for me was it gave me certain things that I wanted to make sure that I did better at.
Yeah.
Now, I might have some other things that I still need to work on, but there are some things that straight out the gate, it was like, okay, I want to do better with this. Okay, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to do that. And so it shaped the relationship that I have with the children that I am rearing because of what I did experience. And then also I came to a point, as continuing to mature, I come to a point where I am able to
Yeah.
reconcile and have a relationship, even though, our relationship did not start out good. And that's an important factor that we want to do because, the whole thing, and I tell people this all the time, the whole reason why they call us the body of Christ is because we were designed to do life together. We
Yeah.
need each other. And so when we become better, just like Cedric said, if we can reach back and if we can restore somebody and then we move forward in better relationships, that's just amazing in and of itself.
And you said something. You said if we can get ourselves right and go back and restore. This is one thing we have to remember as well, because we can also take this personal to the fact of, okay, you've been healed and now you go back, like the analogy, going back to, and you tracing the slime back and you're going back, and there is a chance, or maybe it could be your
Okay, I
father,
know
maybe it
where
could
you're
be your
going.
mother.
Mhm.
The thing about it is like, okay, I'm working on myself and I'm better, and now I'm going to that relationship, and you go to that relationship, and they may be still broken to a point they may not even receive what you say. You have
Mhm.
to be okay.
Mhm.
You have to be okay and say, you know what, all I can do is work on me. All I can do is change me. I can't change my mother, can't change my father, my grandfather. I cannot change anybody but me. all I can change is my world. All I can change is me, myself, and I. All I can change is myself internal. I can't change no relationship. I can't change my husband. I can't change my wife. I can't change my children. All I can do is upgrade myself, becoming the best me I can be. Because oftentimes when we get better, we expect for everybody else to get better. And then it just
Doesn't
makes us
always
get,
happen.
it takes us right back where we came from
Yeah.
because you didn't upgrade yourself and now you just downgraded.
Exactly. And sometimes that make that Q-tipping it real hard
Yeah.
because when you start to get better and do better
You
and
want it.
respond and even and it's
You
and you
want
said
everybody to
something
get it.
we were talking about reconciling. So we definitely have to talk about because when you feel like I'm trying to reconcile with you and you go back to the point and you feel like I'm extending grace or I'm extending forgiveness and it's not received, sometimes that snatches that Q-tipping it
Yeah.
out the window. You
Now
like,
you
oh,
now you
I done
mad
took it
again.
real personal,
Now you mad again.
and not understanding that you've healed and you've become better, but they are still working through that. And
Yeah.
it could be, let's be honest, it could be you as the parent now trying to reconcile with your child, and they are still broken for what happened to them, and they are not ready to receive it yet. So then you just keep working on being a better you. You just keep becoming and just keep loving them to the best of your ability and let them grow to that maturity on their own.
Yeah. Nelson Mandela said something so great, and I think that's one of the
Yes.
best quotes. He said, unforgiveness is like drinking poison, expecting
Yes.
for the other person to die.
Yes, he
And
did.
that's what we do when we don't forgive. We
Mhm.
have to forgive them no matter what, if they receive it or not, because forgiveness is not for them, it's for you.
That's good.
Absolutely.
And it also, you said something, Cedric. You said healing is about you and you do the healing. So whether that person is still here on this earth or not,
Yeah.
you still do the healing. You still can forgive them.
Yeah.
No, it's unfortunate that you can't go back and reconcile that relationship, but you still can heal. You still can address
Yeah.
what's what, and they have different exercises, whether you write a letter or you have
Mhm.
an empty chair, as if the person was sitting there, and whatever you would tell them, you just tell it to the empty chair. There's so many different ways to go about that, but because that person may not be here physically, doesn't mean that you still can't heal and address the things that needs to be addressed, because the healing is that we want to be better. I wrote in my prayer journal last night, and I always pray for my husband. Like anytime I do an entry, and I pray for my husband.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I put in there is that I'm having to do a work, and right now I'm specifically working on my emotions so I can be a better version for him. I said, you deserve a better Jamila.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
love
working
it.
on
I
getting a
love
better
it.
Jamila
That's good.
for him. The end result of all of this is that you become healed. It contributes to your wholeness.
Wholeness.
It allows you to be open. And when you get to a point to where you can be open in your relationships, then it can take relationships to the next level. You can have healthier relationships. So the goal is all of this is to get us to be to a place of wholeness and openness to where we can receive. What if there's another father figure that comes along in your life and somebody wants to father and mentor you, but because you have these deep issues and you hadn't healed, you
Miss
get
it.
open to that influence. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hey, do me a favor real quick. Go ahead and subscribe. And if you're watching on iTunes, go ahead and rate the podcast because it helps us get the word out.
We'd like to invite you to head on over to our leadership podcast, Lead to Greatness, where my husband is interviewing entrepreneurs and great leaders every week.
So we want to thank you so much for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.